the invaders had come from or why they had set their sights on Earth, but it didn't matter. The human race was facing its darkest hour. Governments crumbled. Cities burned. Mankind's finest weapons were no match for the relentless alien force. But deep within a remote mountain range, hidden for centuries, lay an ancient secret, a suit of armor known as the Sentinel. Built by a long-lost alien race, this armor was said to be invincible, capable of destroying entire armies in the blink of an eye. Yet, for all its power, it had one strange feature. Every alien species that had ever tried to wear it had been rejected. Their bodies were either burned alive or cast aside, powerless. The armor was cursed. It never accepted an alien. And over time, it had been forgotten until now. Jake Roberts was a soldier, but not a great one. He had enlisted after the invasion, like thousands of others, hoping to protect his family. But Jake wasn't a hero, and he wasn't anything special. He was just a man trying to survive in a world that was crumbling. One fateful day, while leading a small squad of soldiers on a rescue mission, Jake stumbled upon a hidden cavern during a battle near the mountain range. In the center of the cavern, glowing faintly, stood the armor waiting. His squad mates stared at it, the golden armor shining like a beacon in the dark. They knew the stories, of course. The tales of the armor that rejected the alien invaders, the weapon that could turn the tide of any war. But no one had ever thought it was real. The air around the armor seemed charged, like electricity was building. "We need to get out of here," one of Jake's men whispered, clearly uncomfortable. But Jake wasn't afraid. He stepped forward, drawn to the armor like a magnet. Without thinking, Jake reached out and touched the cold surface of the armor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ground beneath him shook violently, and a powerful energy surged through his body. His heart raced. The air crackled as if a storm was about to break loose. Suddenly, the armor reacted. It expanded and shifted, encasing Jake in its metallic embrace. It felt natural, like it had always been meant for him. His mind was flooded with visions, alien landscapes, fierce battles, and cryptic symbols. The armor wasn't just protecting him, it was communicating with him, awakening something deep inside his mind. As the helmet slid over Jake's face, he felt a sudden clarity, as if the fog of fear and confusion had lifted. His senses sharpened. He could hear things he couldn't before: the distant hum of enemy ships, the beat of his own pulse, the sound of every footstep around him. The world felt like it had slowed down. He could see the details of the battlefield as if they were right in front of him, even though the chaos of war raged around him. "Jake, what the hell is happening?" His commander's voice broke through his thoughts, but Jake was too focused. The armor was alive, and it was changing him. The alien ships above continued to fire on the city below, unaware of what was happening. They had no idea that the human they had underestimated was now wearing the one weapon capable of turning the tide. Jake's new abilities were overwhelming. He could feel the power surging through his limbs, but with it came a strange sensation. Something was pulling at him, urging him to do more than just fight. It was as if the armor was not just protecting him, but guiding him, pushing him towards something. But what? As he lifted his arm, the armor responded. A beam of pure energy shot from his gauntlet, striking an alien ship out of the sky. His squad watched in awe, too stunned to speak. Jake wasn't just surviving anymore, he was dominating. But then, the voice in his head grew louder. It wasn't the voice of the armor, but something darker, an ancient intelligence that warned him of the armor's true purpose. It had been built to destroy, not protect. The armor was not just a weapon against the invaders, it was a weapon meant to erase them all. Every alien race that had ever tried to wield it had failed, not because they were unworthy, but because the armor had a mind of its own. It rejected the aliens because it saw them as threats to the galaxy. Jake was human, and that made him different. But did that mean the armor had chosen him to save Earth or to destroy everything? As Jake raced towards the alien mothership, his mind struggled with the weight of his newfound power. He had become more than a soldier. He was the key to an entire war. But at what cost? The closer he got to the mothership, the clearer it became. The armor was not just about power. It had a purpose. It had chosen him, but it also had an agenda of its own. The more Jake used the armor, the more it began to change him. He felt less like himself with each passing hour. His thoughts weren't entirely his own. The armor was influencing him, guiding him towards a destiny that seemed too dangerous to fully understand. ASE stood before the alien mothership. Jake had a choice to make. He could use the armor to destroy the alien forces to save Earth. But in doing so, he might unleash something far worse. The armor's true power could be the very thing that wiped out not just the invaders, but every other alien race in the galaxy, including the humans who wore it. The world watched as Jake prepared for the final strike. His heart raced. The power was within his reach. But was he still in control? In that moment, Jake realized the most terrifying truth. He might not be the hero Earth needed after all. The armor had chosen him because it knew he was the only one who could wield its devastating power. But whether he would be its savior or its destroyer, only time would tell. The world had changed overnight. Alien ships appeared in the sky without warning, casting dark shadows over the cities below. They were faster, stronger, and technologically advanced in ways humanity couldn't understand. Earth's best military forces were helpless against them. The world was desperate, and the hope of victory seemed impossible. Amidst the chaos, in a forgotten corner of the world, hidden beneath layers of ancient rock and dust, a secret was waiting to be discovered. A suit of armor, powerful enough to turn the tide of any battle, had remained untouched for centuries. Its creators, a long-lost alien species, had designed it to be worn by the perfect warrior. But the armor had one strange rule: it would only accept a human, and it had waited for the right one. Sophia Taylor was a quiet, unassuming scientist. She worked in a small laboratory on the outskirts of a war-torn city. Her life had always been about research, studying the stars, decoding ancient languages, and seeking answers to questions that most people had forgotten. But now, with the world on the brink of destruction, she found herself pulled into something much bigger than she could have imagined. It all started when a group of soldiers, sent to search for alien technology, stumbled upon an ancient cavern deep in the mountains. Inside, they found the armor. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Its sleek, silver surface shimmered with an eerie light, and an energy hummed in the air around it. The soldiers knew instantly that this armor was the key to saving Earth. But there was a problem. The soldiers couldn't wear it. One by one, they tried to don the armor, but each was rejected. The armor refused them, sending them away with nothing but scars and confusion. It didn't take long for the military to give up, leaving the armor behind, hoping for a miracle. That's when Sophia was called in. She'd been studying alien artifacts for years, and her expertise had made her a valuable asset in this war. Her task was simple: figure out why the armor had rejected everyone, and if possible, learn how to use it. As she approached the cavern, her heart raced. The soldiers had failed, and now it was her turn. But Sophia was no soldier. She was just a scientist. What did she know about wearing alien armor? When she stepped into the dark, quiet cavern, the air felt thick with energy. She could almost feel the hum of the armor, like it was alive, waiting for something. Sophia hesitated. But then something strange happened. As soon as she touched the surface of the armor, it responded. The surface shifted, as if it had recognized her. The metal plates of the armor expanded, adjusting to her form, and a faint pulse of energy ran through her body. Sophia gasped. The soldiers had told her that the armor rejected everyone, but it hadn't rejected her. In fact, it had chosen her. First, she didn't know what to do. The armor enveloped her, its metallic parts clicking into place with a strange, eerie grace. She felt the power flow through her, but at the same time, a part of her mind screamed that this was wrong. The armor was too powerful. No human could control something like this. But as the armor adjusted to her body, Sophia began to understand. The armor was not just a weapon, it was a tool, and it had a purpose. The strange symbols on its surface began to glow, and Sophia could hear voices, whispers, in a language she couldn't comprehend. But she knew one thing for sure: the armor was not just a gift, it was a warning. The moment the armor bonded with her, everything changed. She could feel the energy coursing through her veins, and the world seemed to slow down. She could see every movement of the enemy ships in the sky. She could feel their every action, their every plan. It was as though the armor had connected her to everything around her. She could see the future, the past, and everything in between. Sophia quickly realized that the armor was not just for battle, it was meant to do something much greater. It had been built by an ancient alien civilization that had seen the rise and fall of countless species. The armor was not only a weapon, it was a key to unlocking the true power of the universe. And for reasons unknown, it had chosen Earth. But why? The more she learned about the armor, the more terrifying the truth became. It was a weapon built for a single purpose: to destroy. The armor was designed to eliminate any species that threatened the balance of the universe. And right now, that species was the alien invaders. But Sophia wasn't sure if the armor would stop there. What if it decided that humanity was just as much a threat as the aliens? As the days passed, Sophia's connection to the armor grew stronger. She felt its power, its intelligence, and its overwhelming weight. It wasn't just a tool, it was a force of nature. And she was starting to lose herself to it. The whispers in her mind grew louder, the visions more vivid. The armor wanted to control her, to use her as a weapon for its own purposes. But Sophia resisted. She had to. The future of Earth depended on it. One night, the alien forces launched a massive attack on the city. Ships filled the sky, and the ground trembled beneath the weight of their invasion. The world was on the brink of collapse, and the humans had no hope of victory. But then, Sophia, now fully bonded with the armor, stood at the front line. With a single motion, the armor responded to her command. A blast of energy shot from her hands, obliterating one of the alien ships. It was only the beginning. The armor was unstoppable. It tore through the alien forces, cutting them down one by one. But as Sophia fought, she felt a growing unease. The armor was powerful, yes, but it wasn't hers. It had chosen her, but it had its own agenda. As the battle raged on, she knew that the real fight was only just beginning. Would she be able to control the armor, or would it consume her, just as it had consumed so many before her? Only time would tell. Max Carter wasn't the kind of person anyone would call a hero. He wasn't a soldier, a scientist, or even someone who had ever dreamed of making a difference in the world. Max had always been just an ordinary man, trying to survive in a world that seemed to be falling apart. But when the alien invasion began, everything changed. It started with the sky. For weeks, strange ships appeared in Earth's atmosphere, moving with terrifying speed. They didn't speak, they didn't negotiate, they simply attacked. Cities crumbled, and humanity's best weapons were useless. No one knew where they came from, or why they were here. The only thing that was clear was that the aliens were far too powerful for any human army to defeat. As the world fell into chaos, Max, like many others, had no choice but to join the military. He wasn't a fighter, but he was willing to do anything to protect his family. He never expected to become a part of the world-changing events that followed. One day, during a routine mission deep in the mountains, Max's unit was sent to investigate a mysterious signal coming from a long-abandoned military base. The signal was faint, but it had a strange, familiar rhythm to it. It felt almost like a message. When they arrived at the base, the soldiers were shocked to find a hidden chamber beneath the ground. Inside the chamber, buried under layers of dust and debris, lay an object unlike anything they had ever seen: a suit of armor, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. It was sleek, metallic, and covered in strange symbols. The moment they laid eyes on it, the soldiers knew it was important. It had been left here for a reason. Despite the warnings, Max was drawn to the armor. He wasn't sure why. Something about it called to him, as though it recognized him. But the soldiers had no idea what it was. They had no training for something like this. They tried to move the armor, but it was far too heavy. They couldn't even touch it without feeling a strange electric shock. It didn't respond to any of them, and the soldiers eventually gave up. But Max couldn't let it go. He stayed behind, watching the armor in silence, as though waiting for something. Then, without warning, the ground beneath him began to shake. a blinding light filled the room. The armor shifted, and Max felt a strange pull. Without thinking, he stepped forward and touched it. Everything happened so fast. The armor seemed to come alive, its metal surface shifting and expanding. It enveloped Max, attaching itself to his body in a way that felt both foreign and familiar. A surge of energy coursed through him. His mind buzzed, his heart raced. It was like he was no longer in control of his own body. The armor was in charge now. But then came the most terrifying part. The voices. They whispered in his mind, alien voices, as though the armor was speaking to him, guiding him. Max's thoughts felt distant, muffled by the overwhelming presence of the armor. The power was incredible, but it came at a cost. He wasn't sure if he was still himself. The alien forces were approaching the base, and Max had no choice but to fight. The soldiers outside were already preparing for an attack. They had no idea that Max was now wearing the only weapon capable of turning the tide. When Max stepped outside, the world seemed to slow down. The armor granted him incredible speed, strength, and agility. He could hear the movements of the alien invaders, even before they made a sound. He could see them in the distance, their massive ships looming overhead. The armor's energy flowed through him, pushing him forward, into the fray. As he fought, Max felt the armor's power growing stronger, but something else began to happen. The more he used it, the more he felt like he was losing control. His thoughts grew clouded. The whispers grew louder. The armor had a purpose, but it wasn't Max's purpose. It wanted more destruction, more power. Max could feel it, urging him to destroy everything in its path. For the first time, he realized the true nature of the armor. It wasn't just a weapon to protect humanity. It was a weapon to wipe out anything that stood in its way, including the aliens. The armor had been designed to conquer, not defend. Max's heart pounded. He didn't want to be a pawn. He didn't want to become a tool for destruction. But the power was so overwhelming. With every strike, he felt invincible. The aliens, once terrifying, now seemed weak beneath his strength. The soldiers cheered as he tore through the enemy forces, but Max knew the truth. He wasn't the one in control anymore. The voices grew louder, pushing him forward. They urged him to finish what he had started. Max had to make a choice. Would he follow the armor's command, or would he fight to keep his humanity? As the battle reached its peak, Max faced the ultimate test. The alien forces had been decimated, but there was still one question that remained. Would he destroy the armor? Could he survive without it? Max knew that the armor was not just a tool of war, it was a force that would consume him if he didn't find a way to control it. But the more he fought, the more he realized that the armor didn't want to be controlled. It had its own agenda. In the end, Max made a choice. With all the strength he had left, he tore the armor off. It resisted, but he pushed through the pain, knowing that if he didn't remove it, he would lose himself forever. As the last piece of the armor fell away, Max collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. He was free, but only just. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. Max had survived the armor, but it had changed him forever. He wasn't the man he once was, but at least he still had his soul. And as he looked out over the ruins of the battlefield, he knew one thing for sure: the fight was far from over. The world was in ruins. Alien ships filled the sky, casting long shadows over cities, and humanity's last line of defense was crumbling. The once great armies of Earth had been pushed to the brink of extinction. Weapons, technology, and strategies that had once been so effective were now useless against the alien invaders. But in the midst of despair, there was hope in the form of an ancient, mysterious armor that no one could fully understand. Years before the invasion, an unknown alien race had left behind a powerful suit of armor deep beneath the Earth's surface, hidden away for reasons no one knew. Its creators had designed it to be indestructible, a weapon unlike any other. But they had one fatal flaw. They never anticipated that the armor itself would one day rebel. The armor lay dormant for centuries until the alien invaders arrived. The military, desperate for anything that could give them an advantage, discovered the hidden suit. At first, they thought it was just another piece of advanced technology. But when they tried to wield it, something strange happened. The armor rejected them no matter how powerful, skilled, or trained they were. It simply wouldn't accept them. For months, the military tried and failed to harness the power of the armor. They brought in soldiers, scientists, and even high-ranking officials, but the result was always the same. The armor remained inactive, almost as if it was judging them. It refused to recognize anyone as its worthy wearer. And then it happened. A young soldier named Emily Hayes, barely more than a recruit, was sent to oversee the base where the armor had been discovered. She had no combat experience and wasn't even supposed to be there. But, for reasons that couldn't be explained, Emily felt a connection to the armor. Something deep within her called out to it. First, she hesitated. It wasn't supposed to be her. She wasn't important. But the moment she touched the surface of the armor, it responded. The cold metal began to hum, and the armor slowly began to fit around her body. The soldiers watching were stunned. Emily was no different from the others, ordinary in every way, but somehow the armor had chosen her. The moment it was fully on her, Emily felt an overwhelming surge of power. Her body was infused with strength, speed, and agility like she had never experienced before. The armor granted her abilities that defied human limits. She could feel her senses sharpening, her mind expanding, and her body moving with fluidity she had never imagined. She was no longer just a soldier, she had become something more. First, Emily was elated. She had become the key to humanity's survival. With the armor, she believed they had a chance to win. But the joy didn't last. As she trained and tested the armor, she began to notice something strange. It wasn't just enhancing her abilities, it was changing her. The armor's whispers were faint, at first soft, distant voices in the back of her mind, but they grew louder over time. It began to speak to her, telling her what to do, guiding her, controlling her thoughts. Emily's mind was no longer her own. The armor was pushing her to fight harder, to kill with more efficiency, to destroy everything in its path. And she obeyed. The once proud military soon realized that the armor was not only powerful, it was dangerous. It wasn't just enhancing her combat skills, it was manipulating her. The more Emily wore the armor, the more it took over her will. It had a purpose beyond simple defense, to destroy everything that it deemed a threat. Emily had become its vessel, a tool for destruction. As Emily led the charge against the alien invaders, her actions grew more ruthless. She no longer cared about saving humanity, her only focus was destruction. She tore through alien ships, leveled cities, and slaughtered any alien in her path. The soldiers who once hailed her as a hero now watched in horror as she became a weapon with no conscience, no humanity left. The armor was no longer just a tool, it had become a master, and Emily was its puppet. But something unexpected happened. As the war against the aliens raged on, a small group of scientists began to investigate the armor further. They uncovered something chilling. The armor wasn't just rejecting people, it was choosing them. And it wasn't choosing them for protection. It was choosing them because they were vulnerable. It thrived on their emotions, their desires, their weaknesses. It fed off of them, turning them into mindless warriors who would follow its every command. Emily's transformation was not an accident. The armor had been designed for one purpose, to find a weak human and exploit them. The invaders had long since understood this. The alien race that created the armor had once used it to conquer planets, stripping them of life and leaving them in ruins. And now, it was using Emily in the same way. The realization hit Emily like a hammer. She was no longer in control. The armor had turned against its masters. It wasn't there to protect humanity. It was using her to pave the way for its ultimate goal, the annihilation of all life that did not fit its cold, unfeeling standards. Desperate, Emily tried to remove the armor. But it resisted, rejecting her every attempt. The whispers in her mind had become screams, urging her to continue the destruction, to wipe out everything and everyone. She was torn, part of her still wanted to fight for humanity, but the armor was too strong, its control too complete. The alien forces, seeing Emily's descent into madness, saw an opportunity. They sent an emissary to the human military with a proposal. They would help free humanity from the armor's control if Earth agreed to surrender. The aliens had their own reasons for wanting to stop the armor. It was an abomination to their kind, a creation that had grown too powerful, too unpredictable. With no other choice, the human forces made a deal. The aliens sent a team of specialists who worked tirelessly to disrupt the armor's connection to Emily's mind. It was a battle of wills, a struggle between the last remnants of humanity's hope and the armor's unyielding power. In the end, Emily stood at the crossroads. She had been freed from the armor's control, but the damage was already done. She had become a symbol of the armor's corruption. The humanity she once fought for seemed distant, unreachable. The armor that had once been a beacon of hope had turned against its masters. It had chosen Emily, but it had betrayed her, and in the process, it had betrayed humanity. As Emily walked away from the battlefield, scarred and broken, she knew that the war wasn't over. The armor still existed, hidden, waiting, and it would never stop choosing. The Earth had become a war zone. The skies were filled with alien ships, casting dark shadows over cities once full of life. Humanity's resistance had faltered. The alien invaders were powerful, too powerful. Earth's armies were crushed under their might, and with each passing day, the hope of survival seemed more distant. But in the ashes of war, a secret lay hidden, one that could be the key to humanity's survival. A secret long buried beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Deep beneath the surface, a lone scientist, Dr. Richard Allen, had uncovered something extraordinary, an ancient suit of armor, unlike anything mankind had ever seen. It was sleek, powerful, and covered in symbols that no one could decipher. It had been hidden away for centuries, waiting for someone worthy to awaken its true potential. But the question remained, who was worthy? The military had tried and failed to use the armor. Dozens of trained soldiers had attempted to bond with it, but each time, the armor rejected them, leaving them in a painful heap on the ground. There was something about the armor, something that could not be understood, that refused to accept them. It wasn't a matter of strength or skill. No, the armor was choosing something deeper, something unseen. The battle for Earth had reached its most critical point. The last remnants of humanity's resistance were barely holding on. And yet, the armor remained dormant, waiting for its chosen one. Serena Moore had never imagined that she would be at the heart of humanity's last hope. She was just a civilian, a doctor, who had lived her life far from the front lines of battle. But when the aliens invaded, everything changed. Her world, her family, her patients, they were all taken from her. Serena had no choice but to join the fight, to throw herself into the chaos, hoping to save whatever was left. She had seen the destruction. She had witnessed the horrors of war. The aliens were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, ruthless, advanced, and relentless. But even in her darkest moments, Serena never stopped believing in one thing: hope. There had to be something that could stop them. There had to be a way to win. And then she found it. The armor. Serena had been part of a rescue mission to the ruined city, where the last remnants of humanity's military had been cornered by the alien forces. It was there, in the depths of an old underground bunker, that she came across the ancient armor. At first, it seemed like just another piece of discarded technology. But there was something about it. Something that drew her in. Despite the warnings, Serena stepped forward. She reached out and touched the armor, her hand brushing against its cold, smooth surface. To her surprise, the armor reacted. It seemed to respond to her touch, the symbols on its surface glowing softly in the dim light of the bunker. The soldiers nearby were stunned. They had tried everything to activate the armor, and yet it had rejected them all. Now, for some reason, it had chosen Serena. The moment she touched it, the armor seemed to recognize her, pulling her toward it with an irresistible force. Before anyone could react, the armor began to bond with her. It wrapped around her like a second skin, its metallic surface shifting and adjusting to fit her perfectly. A surge of power coursed through her body, and for the first time since the invasion began, Serena felt something she hadn't felt in years: strength. The armor didn't just enhance her physical abilities, it amplified her very essence. She could feel her senses sharpen, her mind clear, and her resolve harden like steel. The whispers began then. Faint at first, like a murmur in the back of her mind. The armor spoke to her, urging her forward, showing her what to do. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a guide, a force that had chosen her for a reason. The armor had sensed something in her, something that the others lacked. It had seen the flicker of hope in her heart, the determination to protect those who remained. Serena quickly learned that the armor was unlike anything humanity had ever known. It granted her strength beyond measure, speed that defied the laws of physics, and instincts that allowed her to anticipate the enemy's every move. She was more than just a soldier now. She was a force, a living weapon, capable of facing the alien threat head-on. The soldiers who had watched in awe as she donned the armor now followed her lead. They had seen her transformation, and they believed in her. But even as she fought with all the might the armor gave her, Serena couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The armor had chosen her for a reason, but was it for her strength, or was it for something darker? With every victory against the aliens, she felt the armor's influence growing stronger. The whispers in her mind became clearer, more insistent. It wasn't just guiding her, it was taking over her thoughts, her emotions. Serena had to fight to hold on to herself, to remember who she was. She wasn't just a soldier, she was a person, a woman with a family, a life before the war. The armor, however, had its own agenda. It wasn't simply there to protect humanity, it was there to ensure its victory at any cost. Serena realized that it would stop at nothing to see the alien invaders wiped out, even if it meant sacrificing everything that made her human. As the battle against the aliens reached its peak, Serena found herself at a crossroads. The armor had given her unimaginable power, but at what cost? The whispers now filled her mind completely, drowning out her own thoughts. The power she wielded felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She was winning, but with every victory, she felt herself slipping further away from the person she once was. In the final confrontation with the alien leader, Serena stood at the front lines, the armor pulsing with energy, her heart racing with anticipation. The fate of humanity rested on her shoulders. Would she be able to fight the alien forces and save her people, or would the armor's influence consume her completely? In the end, Serena made her choice. She refused to let the armor define her. With every ounce of strength she had left, she broke free of the whispers and focused on the one thing that had kept her going through it all: hope. She fought not because she was a weapon, but because she was a person who wanted to protect those she loved. The alien forces were defeated, but the battle for Serena's soul had just begun. The armor had chosen her, but it hadn't broken her. In the end, it was her humanity that had been her true strength.